Hello, all, and welcome to the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Coolbaugh. Today, I have me a very special three-time returning guest, Adrian M. Gibson. Adrian, how are you doing today?
Doing good, my friend. Very happy to be back.
Yeah, I'm stoked. But I'm stoked for the reason why you're back, which is to talk about how great Mushroom Blues has been and been doing just overall. And we get to talk about, SPFBO and everything. So I'm just so glad, like I said before we got recording, just to have you on again and just get to chat about what's going on and
Yeah,
all these great things. So it's just absolutely stellar
little
to see
catch
that
up
happening.
session.
So yeah. We'll catch up. Yeah. I should have sent
Yeah,
you
man.
coffee or something. We could have been like having, or something. Or I'm at my office, so we couldn't have done whiskey, but if I was home, we could have definitely done that. So next
It's all
time,
good,
though,
brother.
that'll be like
Next
our.
time.
I'm
Yeah.
hoping. I'm honestly hoping. I'm hoping, knock on wood, in the future that I need to send you, something in the mail, and we can do it that way. So
Oh,
that's pretty
hell yeah.
awesome. And we'll get into talking about why that is if you don't know, anybody watching this or listening. So Adrian, can you just fill us in a little bit on, like what's been going on since you debuted Mushroom Blues and kind of since like the last time we chatted?
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, if anyone doesn't know me, I'm author of Mushroom Blues. This vibrant little baby right here. Got the hardcover and the
It
paperback.
looks so good.
I'm so happy with how it turned out, man. Yeah, because when we last talked, I didn't even have physical copies. I had
Yeah.
nothing.
Yep.
So I'll show this off a little bit actually, because the paperback doesn't have this, but I wanted to give
Yeah.
my cover artist Felix Ortiz
Oh,
as
he's
much
so
of
awesome.
a boost as I
Oh,
could.
that's
So I
so
just had to
cool. I never
make it
saw
artwork
that. That's so
on
cool.
both sides. So
Oh, that looks amazing. He is like
so
such an amazing like artist. It's ridiculous.
oh, I'm so happy to work with him, man. He's brilliant. But yeah, man, it's been a wild ride
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we talked I think back in February. So
Yep. Yep.
this was during my book tour
Yep.
pre-launch. And so I hadn't gone through the whole process yet.
Yeah.
And I learned very quickly to roll with the punches, just like mess after mess after mess, but like outwardly, things
It looks
seem
put
fine.
together.
Yeah, but behind the scenes, it's like, oh shit, again and again. Um, but the launch went way better than I expected in terms of reception. Like the launch itself was messy. It was like, things that I think I had to go through myself in order to understand like the intricacies of it in terms of
Yeah.
uploading your book and on these different platforms. You have Ingram Spark, you have KDP,
Yep.
paperback version, hardcover version, ebook, blah blah blah. So it ended up being like a staggered release because I didn't really know what the hell I was doing. So, and even if someone tells you, even if you read
Yeah.
tutorials and blah blah blah, there are still things that you're going to mess up.
Yeah. You
And
don't know what
so
you don't know, right? Like,
yeah, and I'm the kind of person where it's like I learn through the process. Like trial
yeah.
by fire is my jam. And so launch ended up being staggered. It was like ebook came out first, a couple days later was paperback, a couple weeks later was the hardcover. But all in all, like the launch, just in terms of how the book sold, how people like the excitement around it and stuff like that. Like the book tour definitely did its job
Yeah.
in terms of getting the word out there, getting my
Yeah.
book
Yeah.
in
It
front of
seemed like
people's
it.
eyes, getting people familiar with like this cover and what the book is about and all that different kind of stuff. And yeah, when the launch happened, I think like within like the first, what was it? Just I think in the first 2 months, so like 8 week span, um, I'd sold, I think it was around like 600 copies,
Yeah.
and I earned out everything that I invested into the book.
Oh, I know that's all. I knew you sold like that many
So
copies. I didn't realize you had earned out at that point. That's awesome.
yeah, yeah. So like that blew my mind. And obviously
Yeah.
like I lucked out from the perspective of a lot of indie authors in the sense that like my background, my personal background, I have, years as graphic designer, illustrator,
Yeah.
tattoo artist. So I had the good fortune to forego a lot of costs that some authors have to go through. Like the cover art was done by Felix Ortiz, but then the typography and the design and everything that's inside the book, the interior design and all that kind of stuff, the formatting, I did all of it myself. And so I saved a ton of money in
Yeah.
that process at the very least. But still, like earning out a book is not a
Yeah, yeah,
small
especially a
thing.
debut. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And I've talked to a ton of authors since then where, they've published multiple books and haven't even like earned out the first one,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
right?
totally.
And
Yep.
so I was pretty blown away by the fact that like that many people wanted to buy my book and the reception was coming in, the reviews were coming in, everything was not completely positive, but generally very positive. It's like
Yep.
there are some like middling reviews, negative reviews, that kind of stuff. But I knew going in, man, like this book is not going to be for everybody. So
Yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, you still have to find your audience, right? So,
exactly.
yep. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Um,
man, it was just like a really overwhelming experience, but in a very positive way.
yeah.
And getting to hear from other authors, getting to hear from readers, seeing people taking pictures of their books, and uh, you know, developing relationships with places like the Broken Binding, where I
Oh
was
yeah,
able to
yeah, yeah.
sell signed hardcovers and stuff like that. All of that just continued to like bolster
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
momentum that had started with the book tour and with the launch.
So I do have to say though, Adrian, and for people listening, that you're making it sound a little bit like more like luck, which some of it is, but I do
No,
have to
I
point
worked my
out,
ass off.
that's what I want to point out, because
Yeah,
if
yeah.
so, I just want for the audience to know, if this is the first time, if you haven't seen, me and Adrian's other chats or our crossover episode, just saying though, like when you first messaged me, like you messaged me so far out in advance, um, that I was like, oh yeah, I have plenty of room, first of all. And then you and I, which, I guess I'm pretty flexible, right? Just in general, I'm like, whatever, as long as I can get you in. And I'll even do extra episodes of the season for people. Like, I don't care. I can do whatever I want, right? It's my
Mhm.
podcast. But like, still, you and I, you're like, but remember, like, you're like, oh, I'm actually kind of more here now. And it was almost like 2 months later. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I'll flip it. You're like, but can I still do like around this date? I just felt like compared to a lot of people I talked to, right? And that's like from you, I learned that lesson. Like, I need to be a little bit more flexible. Like, if I really want this thing to go well, I need to be more patient, more flexible, and have my stuff done, right? And done well.
Mhm.
And I talked to Herman Stewart Angle about this. We talked about him on the podcast when him and I did a crossover for Bartender Between Worlds, and then my novella. But like, we also talked about it privately too. We're like, well, Adrian was really patient with a lot of things, but you were well organized too. Like,
Yeah.
if nobody has seen your book tour, like me and Herman were like writing everything down. And I got a lot of people, no, seriously, like I got a lot of people that I didn't know. I try and go everywhere and listen to your podcast, listen to Herman's, listen to, Tom, like all these people. And it's like, I always just miss stuff though, right? So there were people that I didn't even know that were on your book tour. Then I started listening to their stuff and I got, more resources. So I think it's just a great example of, you set yourself up, in my opinion. So, and Herman and I talked about this on our last podcast together. Like, you set yourself up so well, I think, that all that crap you had to deal with, I don't think it really impacted you as much as other people,
Mhm.
because you were so organized and you were working your butt off. And I also want to
Yeah.
point out, you said you were using some of your previous skills, which we've talked about on here, before. Like, I'm like doing different stuff for my school, right? Like, I have a book trailer. People ask me, like, can I put a book trailer together for you? I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I put my own together.
Mhm.
That's partly of what I do here. And I have a friend who's amazing at it. So if there's somebody, I need their opinion, I'm like, hey, I'll give you free stuff, merch or whatever. Can you help me? So I think that's a great example of you using your background and skills also, to make, everything successful for you and a little bit cheaper
Yeah.
in terms of the cost. But yeah, I just want to point out to people, like, there was a lot of work being done. So I think you should really go and look at, because this is cool for me though, from start to finish. And this is why I, started this podcast, was a journeyman's podcast, as I call it. Is like, I want to get somebody like yourself who messaged me, just
Mhm.
start doing things at that time, but then really see how far people can get really quickly. So I
Yeah.
think this is such a great example, but a little bit's luck, but you worked your butt off. So I just want to point that out to the audience. And that's why I always tell people, like, if you're going to be an indie author, you just have to grind. Like, you have to
Yeah.
know people, do whatever. You and I have gotten ourselves out there, but like, it really just comes down still to that grind. So I think
And
it worked really well.
on top of that, it's like before my book tour, I've been doing my podcast for, I mean, at this point, 3 years now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
And that podcast, I think that was part of the grind. It was like
Yeah.
me
Yeah.
learning, similar to what you're doing. It's like learning
Yep.
process, connecting with other authors,
Yep.
developing friendships and really meaningful connections. And those were the
Yep.
people that I could rely on when it's like, all right, you know, two of my main beta readers were MJ Kuhn, who's my co-host on the podcast, and Crystal Matar, author of Legacy of the Brightwash. Those two helped me out so much, but I never would have made those friendships if it wasn't for doing the podcast.
Yep.
And those two helped Mushroom Blues become what it is. And then on top of that, it's like the the authors that I was able to ask for cover blurbs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I got fucking Adrian Tchaikovsky on the front
Yeah.
cover
Yeah.
with a
Yeah.
blurb, you know. But that's
Yeah.
because him and I have developed a rapport through years of doing podcast stuff together, you
Yep.
know. And then finally, like when I was in Glasgow last month, or not last month, in August for Worldcon, I saw him in person.
That's
We had
cool.
like really nice conversations. I was able to give him like a signed copy of the book.
Oh, that's cool.
Finally, be like, here's a copy with your name on the front. Like, thank you so much, kind of thing. And it's
Yeah.
like really meaningful to be able to develop those kinds of connections with other people in the industry, and
Yeah.
all of that stuff, even though it might seem small at the moment, it's like all of it accrues into something much bigger than you can ever imagine, to the point where
Yeah.
it's like I'm going to launch my you know, self-published debut. How many self-published debuts fall flat, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, or how many of them just kind of like straggle along without much traction, without many reviews, without many readers, without earning out all this different kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I tell people this, like Logan D. Irons was one of my alpha readers, like volunteered, like got hold of me, like, yeah, I'll do that. I'm like, and we had just gotten done with our interview, and him and I, like, well, yeah, we have similar background from the same spot in Michigan, went to, Michigan State University, all these things, like, so similar, love history. So him and I talked a lot privately, but he just messaged me. He's like, hey, I saw you needed somebody. I'm like, sure. And I just interviewed him on the podcast. And like H.L. Tinsley is another one. She's been on like 3 times now. So that was cool. And she got a hold of me and was like, hey, I would love to. I like smaller, like novellas. That's just like my jam. I'm like, yeah, sure. I agree with you. Like if I hadn't, connected with those people, I would still be dead in the water, and
Yeah.
there were so many things that they helped me with just with their feedback, let alone like editing feedback from like Sarah Torn and stuff. So, and even like Sarah and I, like she's coming on now this season. Her and I have tried for like 4 seasons, and I always have something that like messes up my schedule or something. But now we're like able to get it figured out. So that's just so
Nice.
cool, right? To see it come full circle. So I agree.
Yeah.
This is a grind, right? Like it's a lot of extra time and stuff. But you almost get like addicted. Herman and I talked about this. You almost get like addicted, right, to helping people. And you're just like, yeah, I
But
want
the
you
thing
to be
is, it's
successful.
like, right, but it's like I would say it's like an addictive feedback loop where it's like
Yeah, that's a good
you're
point.
putting so much out there, but then you're getting a lot in return. And when you
Yeah,
launch
yeah,
a book, like I realized when I launched Mushroom Blues, how much of what I put out
yep,
came back
yeah,
to help me in return. You know, the
yep,
people who are like, you know, you've done so much for me. Even if it's just like sharing something, retweeting something, that in and of itself means a lot, because it's like
yeah,
that person knows you enough to say like, I like what that person's doing and I want to help them. I want to boost them, even if it's
yep,
just on a small scale, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like when you debut and when you launch, you realize like, man, everything that I've worked towards,
yep,
all of that is coming back to benefit me. And not that that's like the only reason that you do something.
yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
put stuff like you put yourself out there because it feels like the right thing for you to do and the thing that you want to do. But it is really nice to see, you know, when it comes down to it, people are willing to help out in return.
Yeah, yeah. Well, in my podcast group, right? Like there's like a few people who like no matter what will share anything. And
Mhm.
granted, like I share their stuff all the time, but I don't expect it, right? But like they will literally share anything. Like you post something, they'll
Yeah.
share it. And then especially if I post it, like if I repost something you post in my group,
Yeah.
they'll share it because I like twice, right? They'll share
Mhm.
it initially and then share it again. So you think of that every time, right? And it's like, that's just cool, right? That there's like 20, 30 people that will do that every time. And to
Mhm.
me, I think it's just so cool. Like I totally agree. I see it all the time, right? It's just, and I've had people come up to me like, hey, I like what you're doing. I like you help indie authors. just let me know when your pre-order is up. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, well, the book is, they go, I don't even care. They're like, it's your book. I'm going to buy it. I'm like, that's awesome, you know? So I totally agree. I think it's just cool to have those conversations with people. I'm like, yeah. And I've like kind of kept a list, you know, with people that have been on the podcast or in the podcast group or something. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I'll whatever. I'll send you a copy. Or they're like, no, I want to buy one. And I'm like, I get that because I want to buy your book, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think you sent me one on Google and then I bought it.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot, right? And then I'll buy the Audible too because I want my friends to be successful. So, you know, I want to read it, but I also, you know, want it on Kindle and stuff because I'm like addicted
Yeah.
to collecting them. So, but yeah, I totally agree. It's just super cool
Yeah.
to
I
see
had
that.
this exact conversation with Rob J. Hayes because he helped me out early
God, I
on.
love Rob.
Rob is amazing. So him and Ryan Cahill did like help me out. They basically, we just did like Zoom calls and they
Oh,
walked me
cool.
through a bunch of stuff.
Oh, awesome.
So I
Does
was
not
really,
surprise
really,
me.
really, really grateful to them. And so it's like I sent a copy to Ryan, and then I messaged Rob and I was like, hey, I want to send you a copy of the book, like a physical copy, like as a thank you. And he's like, I
Yeah,
already got one. I'm like, what the
of
fuck,
course he does.
dude? Yeah. So it's really amazing to see this, um, not just between friends, but between authors, like the community as a whole. There's a deep, deep sense of camaraderie,
Yeah, yeah,
and which makes me extra frustrated when people kind of swoop in and purport that authors are in competition with one another.
yeah, yeah. I
And
agree.
in reality, it's like, no, like, dude, I had the weirdest experience. So basically, like a month before Mushroom Blues came out, I realized there's another fungal noir book that released in February. So like a month before mine.
Oh, jeez.
And I reached out to the guy. His name's Austin Sheary. His book is called City of Spores. And really, really nice guy. But I messaged him and I was like, dude, this is crazy. How did it happen
Yeah,
that the two of us wrote fungal noir books and we're releasing them within a month of each other? Because we'd never
that's
spoken
crazy.
before. I'd
Yeah,
never seen anything of his before. I had no idea that he existed until this moment. And since then, like we've like been sharing each other's stuff
yeah, yeah, yeah. I would. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and just trying to like help each other out because I'm like, this is amazing,
Crazy.
the fact that I spent so much time writing this book and then realized here's this moment where so close to launch, god damn, some other dudes are releasing a fungal noir book. But at the same time, it's like, you know, the way that we have conversations and everything like that, it's like he's such a great guy, and neither of us are, I don't think, like viewing each other as competition. It's kind of like, if we can build a movement here, like if we
Yeah,
can kind
it's
of
like a whole new
bolster,
genre,
like if we can
subgenre.
bolster each other up and kind of like
Yeah,
build this kind of fungal mashup
yeah,
kind
yeah,
of vibe, and hopefully that catches on, you know what I
yeah, yeah.
mean? But
No,
I
for
thought it
sure.
was
Yeah,
like a really strange
that's
serendipitous
crazy.
moment. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Like MJ and I talk a lot about. We talked a lot. I just want to go back to community real quick. So it's so funny, right? So your co-host MJ Kuhn was one of my first guests season one.
yeah,
I love MJ. So then Crystal, I had I think like end of season, yes, end of season one, right around. It was like my February she wrote month, and she was one of my guests. So it's so funny. And then Rob's a alumni of the podcast too. Gotta get Ryan at some point.
yeah.
Getting my UK people and other time zones trying out of the way for the season.
Ryan will be back in Ireland some point.
Oh,
So
cool. Oh,
yeah,
cool.
because
That's good to
he's in
know.
New Zealand now, which is just
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
far off like
It's
fantasy
so
land.
hard.
So
I
at
have
least
some.
he'd be like
Yeah,
a little bit more manageable when he's
yeah.
back in the
I have
UK.
a couple
Yeah,
people that moved to Japan. I'm like, son of a gun. I missed
yeah,
season three. My chance. So now it's like 10 p.m. right now, or like for
right.
me, or like really early for them. So it's like I could do 10 or 10:30 p.m. after my kid goes to sleep for an hour.
Yeah,
But it's just so funny that you mentioned that though, because I do agree, like community, right? Like Rob's always helping people. Like Rob is just awesome, right? Has his whole blog thing and newsletter and
hmm,
sending out indie, and a lot of people in my podcast group, like on Facebook, follow like Rob, and go, and they share a lot of his posts, right? Like if I miss
hmm,
sharing or something like that. So it's so cool to see people that and I totally agree with the competition thing. And I actually think MJ and I talked about that in one of our two-part episodes in season one, because it had just happened like 3 years ago, where somebody on Twitter was like, oh, indie communities in competition. Her and I were like, no, we're not, because
No.
I have a fantasy that's similar to hers, but which is behind you, Among Thieves, with thieves and stuff, but like totally different, right? But like same like kind of subgenre. And it's like James Logan, I think, are kind of a little bit more similar, I would even
Mhm.
say, than like me and MJ's. But like it was
Yep.
so cool, right? To just find people, like the Black Tongue Thief with Christopher and stuff. Like it's so cool to be able. I've talked to these people privately too, right? Like, hey, really like this. Like, have questions and stuff. I just think it's so cool to be able to connect with people in your subgenre. So I'm actually so happy for you that
Yeah.
somebody else, had like a similar thing, because now you're like, you know what I mean? Like I've had the experience a lot,
Right.
but that's like a really unique one. So that's like
Because isn't it, is
insane.
it's the thing is like the competition perspective, I think, ignores the fact that when someone finishes with one book, say someone reads Among Thieves and
Yep.
its sequel, complete duology, like Among Thieves, Thick as Thieves, they finish that. They're not going to be like, oh, well, that's it for me. I don't like thief
Yep.
books anymore. I'm never going to read another one. No, they finish those two books. They're going to be like, what more can I find? They're going to be like,
Yep.
oh, maybe I've never read Loch Lamora. Oh, maybe I've never read James's The Silver Blood Promise. Oh, maybe I've never read X, Y, and Z. The people who read a book and are huge fans of it are probably going to be fans of like the genre subgenre
Yeah.
that that
Yeah.
book encapsulates it,
Yep.
and then they're going to look for more. So someone
Yeah.
reads
Yeah.
Mushroom Blues, they're like, man, I could really go for some more fungal noir. I hope that they go find Austin Sheary's City of Spores and go read that,
That's super cool.
because it's like these books feed into each other, because no one's ever going to be completely satisfied
Yep.
with just one book,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Or one author.
like,
Yeah.
right, it's not, I mean, like maybe Brandon Sanderson is one of those few authors who people are like, I just want to consume everything Brandon, and that's fine, whatever. But if someone's like, I want to read Dragon Rider fantasy, and they go read Ryan Cahill's whole series, and they're like, I
Yeah.
want more, then they can go read Michael R. Miller's,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
like Ascendant and those books, and get more Dragon Rider fantasy and be more satisfied. So it's one author feeding into another, because there's this beautiful cross pollination.
Yeah.
So the
Yeah. Yeah.
competition thing is just bullshit.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. No, I
everything's
totally
feeding
agree.
into everything else.
Yeah, and then you have people like me, right? That just like freaking buy everything. And I'm like, I read one and I'm like, oh, I'll come back to it. And then I'm
Yeah,
just like, I'm reading like 10 books at once right now. My wife's like, you got to just like get done. I wanted 40 for the year. She goes, you could be done already. And then on to
yeah,
52. But I've been getting sidetracked because I'm just like, I just want to read, right? So
yeah.
sometimes like, oh, and but like, I say
You're a mood
like,
reader, but you don't
yeah,
finish them.
but I do eventually. But right now, it's like it's just been so hard, right? You know how it is with,
Right,
with
right.
writing at the same time. You're just like kind of burnt out. But I didn't want to not read, so then I started new stuff. So now I'm like in this bind where I'm like, my best friend's like, dude, you just gotta focus. I'm like, I'm really trying, but I'm like slowly starting to knock stuff out. So yeah, like yours is one of them. I don't. I will be done before this podcast goes out. So I have I have my review
Fingers
coming.
crossed, dude.
So no, seriously, I'll be done. Yeah, I got one knocked out. I'm actually about to be done with Silver Blood Promise today, and then I have like another really small one. Then I have yours, so I'm like really excited to kind of get done and just get the reviews out at this point, and just to like kind of share thoughts and stuff. Obviously, people. But yeah, it's just cool. I totally agree. The competition thing. I'm like, if you want to be with be competition, like you can go be competition over here. The rest of us are gonna have a great time
Mhm.
helping each other out and enjoying
Yeah.
each other's books. So,
You can
which I
you
think
can
is
go
so
have
awesome.
your solo pity jerk off
Yeah,
session
yeah,
over
yeah,
there by
yeah. Yep,
yourself, and
yep,
we're all gonna have a good time because we're trying to like bolster each other
yep,
up.
yep, exactly. Yeah, do your own thing. So that's totally fine. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I really want to get into, discussing, just like the amazing things have happened, at this time, in terms of, just you entering the contest and stuff for SPFBO.
Mhm.
So I'm kind of curious, like, just like what was the general process like for getting, Mushroom Blues into SPFBO?
I mean, I can apply this to both SPFBO and SPSFC.
Oh, actually,
Um,
that would actually be better because I've
yeah,
actually had a couple people ask me about that recently and I haven't gotten to get back to them. So this is perfect.
yeah. Because I entered Mushroom Blues in both, because like
Yeah,
why
yeah.
not?
Yeah, why
I
not?
think
Yeah.
I think it veers enough into either that I can get away with it. So I was just like, why
I think
not? I'm
that's
gonna give it
fair.
a try.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll start with SPFBO. So that's the fantasy ones, self-published fantasy blog off. That's run by Mark Lawrence, and that one is fantasy oriented. But obviously there's like wiggle room in there, like science fantasy or urban fantasy, like all those things can kind of fit into there. The process for entering that one, they changed the rules this year
Yeah.
on how to enter. So it's kind of like a lottery system. Before it was first come, first serve. But the issue supposedly in the past with that was that obviously some people, like in Australia, for instance,
Totally.
based on their time zone, would get totally screwed over.
Yep.
They'd have to wake up at like, 3 in the morning in order to enter into this
Yeah, yeah.
competition.
I know people have done that.
What exactly? So what ended up happening is they did a lottery system where it's like they're basically had like a window where people could enter, like a time window. I think it was like a couple days or something like that. And then after that, it was just a random lottery of
Oh, interesting.
300 of however many people applied. So I just ended up getting into the 300, and that was pretty much it. It's like
Wow. Okay.
you sign up with a Google form and you submit like a PDF or an EPUB version of your book, fill out all the information, contact info, all that kind of stuff. So in terms of complexity, it was super simple.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
The rest of it is kind of just like waiting to see what happens, pretty much. Which is good in a sense because I just kind of like put it out of my mind
Yeah, totally.
for like months and months. Um, and then when I was in Glasgow, uh, the it got announced that I was like a semifinalist,
Oh,
which is really cool.
that's awesome.
Um, and the team that was judging my book. Um, I know the person who runs it, Mahir Wanchu over at Fantasy Book Critic.
Oh,
So he like stepped out of like judging just for like um, for bias reasons because we're
yeah,
friends.
yeah, yeah.
But the rest of his team judged my book.
Oh,
So he told me personally like you got semifinalist. And then last month, it was announced that I was their finalist pick, and I was the first out of 10. So it's basically like out of 300 books, it gets whittled down to I can't even remember how many semifinalists. Um,
oh, yeah. I'm totally blanking.
I
Only
don't
talk
know.
about it every year.
Yeah, at the very least, it halves. Like it goes down to
Yeah.
like less than 150,
Yep.
and then from that 150 or however many, it gets whittled down to 10 finalists. So Mushroom Blues was the first out of 10 that was announced, and as of the time that we're recording, 3 more have been announced. So right now there are 4 out of 10 finalists that are announced. And so once those 10 are all selected, then it basically like every blog team involved reviews and judges each book and gives it a score. And then those scores are averaged out. And then whichever book has the highest average wins is pretty much how it works. So that's SPFBO. It's pretty like hands off. Like I'm not really doing much.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But at the same time, like I know people who've been finalists in the past or who have won, like Rob Hayes.
Yep.
The the sort of boost, like promotional boost that SPFBO offers, I've already seen it. Like Mark Lawrence posted once about my book. He's posted a bunch about my book now,
Yeah,
but the
yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
post, the first post he did about my book, this is a benefit of like indie publishing where you can just go onto Amazon and like see your sales day by day. Basically, he like posted about my book, and then the next day was like my sales like shot up by like
Awesome.
I think it was like 12 copies in one day.
Oh, that's
You
awesome.
know, so little things like that. And Mark has been really nice and has been sharing a lot of stuff, and he's like it seems like he's quite involved. And then SPSFC was pretty much the same thing in terms of signing up,
Oh, interesting.
except the lottery thing. So you just fill out a Google form, pretty much. It's really annoying because you have to pay attention to like when do these things open?
Mm.
When is the sign up period and that
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. But you just fill out this Google form, submit it, and then I think what they do instead of a lottery system, it's kind of like they at least go through all of the submissions and make sure that none of them are just like
Mm.
complete crap. Like there is some sort of like submission criteria.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And once they have that, then basically they pick all of the, like they pick 300 and then allot them to different judging teams and
Oh,
stuff like
interesting.
that. So I think SPSFC like right now is still announcing the which books are being judged by which teams.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, didn't know that.
Since like I signed up for SPFBO in like May, and I signed up for SPSFC probably like mid September,
Hmm, okay.
something like that. So yeah, they're staggered in terms of when they happen.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but in terms of like the yeah like difficulty of applying for these things, super easy, super easy. Main thing is just pay attention to the SPFBO website or the SPSFC website or Mark Lawrence's Twitter. He's very good at updating that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There's an
yeah.
SPFBO group on Facebook as well. Um, but the thing that I like about SPFBO is that Mark Lawrence is very, very involved.
Yeah, he's
Um,
very hands-on. I saw his
yeah,
posts for your book, like Russian Blues, like within I think like 10 minutes.
yeah.
So that was really, I was like so excited. I was like, oh, that's so cool. Yeah, so it's really neat. It's funny because I just want to mention a couple things that just like comments based on what you said. So like I did look it up. It's 595 people for the lottery, and
Okay.
then you got 300.
So 195 got cut from that.
Yeah, now like
Yeah,
that's crazy to think, right? So I just want to just point out to our audience, like, so when we talk about luck, that could be the luck factor,
that
right?
is a
The
luck.
lottery,
That is a luck thing. Yeah.
but yeah, but two, because we've had a lot of, I'm very lucky, right? Being like small for a podcast, I'd say, and still getting up there, but like and like maturing, but like I've had a lot of people like yourself. I've just been lucky where I just thought book looks cool, sounds cool, really enjoy talking to the author. And I've
Mm-hmm.
had them on. I've had a lot of semifinalists, a lot of finalists, but it's just so funny to me that there's all people talk about the luck factor. It is luck for the lottery or whatever, or if you maybe even depending on which team you get, right? If your book
Mm-hmm.
fits for them, but the book itself speaks for itself. And I've
Right.
noticed that every single time, right? So I just want to point out to our audience, like, because you worked your butt off, right, and were patient and crafted such a good story, um, and just like I've talked to you about this before, but just like chapter one itself, like I was hooked within, like maybe like 250 words, just from like that perspective and like how you started it. So I just
Mm-hmm.
think that just goes to show you in the audience, right? Like if you want a good example, right, of you have some luck in there, right? And Dirk Ashton talked about that too a lot when I had him
Yeah.
in season one. But the book always speaks for itself, I think personally, when it comes down to it. Now, maybe depending on the team you have or whoever, maybe it's just a personal thing.
Right.
But
But even
there's a
then, it's
team.
like
There's a
right.
team
It's like
involved.
there
Is
are
my
multiple
point.
people. There are
Yep,
multiple people
exactly.
at each team who are reviewing the book, and
Yep,
then
exactly.
whatever they score your book as like an aggregate.
Yep.
So it's never just one person.
Yeah.
And I think SPSFC has kind of like a system in place this year where um, there have to be multiple people that read your book
Yeah, that's what I was hearing.
in order for the first person's bias to not overwhelm
Yep.
the end decision about that particular book,
Yeah,
which I
yeah.
think is a really, really good rule that they made this year. So
Yeah,
it's like
yeah, that's smart.
within each team, at least two people are reviewing it,
Yeah,
which
which
is
I think
good.
is smart. I had some
Yeah.
people like talk to me about the SPFBO, and they're like, they were confusing it with other contests where one person was reading your book. I'm like, no, no, no,
Right.
no, no. It's my son always says to me, no, 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 Dad. Like, no, like that's not the case. I just want people to be clear. So, but again, it
Right.
just goes to show that with you and other guests we've had, on here, like it really comes down to the book, right? If you're
Mhm.
focused on the book, you like you said, you paid attention to when the contests were, and it's nice that they are staggered. I have a couple others that people have told me. So I'm like, okay, I have a few things coming out next year. So I'm like, I'll try to, I'm not even gonna try and just get one thing in. I'm
Right.
gonna try, and do, even though they're Nobels or
Dude,
whatever.
there's so much though. But my
Yeah.
friend Zach Diamanti, author of Stone and Sky,
Also a
he we're
podcast alumni for both
also
of us.
alumni. Um, we're part of this Discord group called the Break-ins, where we're all debut authors. But he made a Google spreadsheet
Oh,
of
that's
all the
awesome. Zach would.
awards. Yeah, I know, dude. He would. He made a spreadsheet of all the awards, the website, how much it costs, the application date, all this different kind of stuff. So we can basically just go on there and be like, which award is coming up? Like Indie Ink Awards,
Yeah.
or like I realized after I launched Mushroom Blues, like there are some that I could have applied for, like what is it, like BBNYA.
I think
So it's
so.
like Book Bloggers Novel of the Year Award.
Yeah, yeah.
I would have been I would have been eligible for that one, but I just
Oh, okay.
totally didn't know that it
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah.
happening, and I missed it. So it's like I can apply next year,
Yep.
but there are just so many different things that people can apply for, that are specifically geared towards indie authors. But a lot of it is like you need to find yourself Zach, who's going to make you a spreadsheet so
I actually,
you know when all this crap is happening.
I'm actually trying to remember now because it was a while ago. I've had a lot happen,
Yeah,
but I can't remember if it was him or one of the other of you guys. Somebody sent it to me, like that interview, and I had several on, right, like back to back to back, and I can't
yeah.
remember, but somebody sent me a copy of it. They're like, "Oh, you need it? Like, here you go." I was like, "Oh, thanks." And
Probably Zach. He's
I
the only
think
one who made that spreadsheet.
yeah, I have to go
Go
back
DM
and
him after
I have to
this.
go back and talk to him about it because I have it somewhere saved. But that's so funny because I totally
Yeah.
forgot. I believe he sent it to me, and I was like, I didn't know that there were this many. So I started to plan out
Mm-hmm.
a little bit for next year. But I also think it comes down when you're indie, right? And really just anybody. I think it comes down to planning,
Right.
and being able.
Can I
I
just say
actually, yeah, yeah,
one quick thing? Out of like these awards that we're talking about, like some of them you have to pay for. It's kind of like pay to play.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yep.
Um, but at the very least, like many of them do offer monetary
Oh yeah, yeah,
awards for the winners. So it's like if you win, like you could get like $1,000, something
yeah.
like that, right? SPFBO and SPSFC are free. So just take that into account. There are some that are
That's a
free
good
and
point.
others that are pay to play. So
Yeah. And that's a good point. I just want to point out too, like just like you said, with like just mark sharing or just it's kind of funny, right? Like I had somebody that I forget who was on the last one, and they were a semifinalist. They printed the semifinal or their book with the semifinalist sticker, and they were having it ran, and then they got to be a finalist, and they're like, "Dang it! Like yay, but dang it!" And they had to go and put the finalist sticker on. So when
yeah,
I interviewed them, they had the semifinalist sticker, but the contest was still going on. And they're like,
right.
"Yeah, I'm a semifinalist." It was like our second interview, and then they had to then do that. So when I go back interview them a third time, they'll have the finalist sticker on there. So they didn't win, but they were finalists. So I thought it was so
Mhm.
funny that was like literally like within 2 days apart, like kind of
Yeah.
happened. It's funny, right? Because a lot of people, like you're saying, right? Like I would say, like especially with SPFBO, like even if you're a semifinalist, right? You get that sticker and you put it on your book, like people
Mhm.
are like, damn, people like me, any of the 300 people that enter, there is a huge list that they send right on X or Twitter, and I will just go through it. That's my favorite day because if there's
Yeah.
somebody new that I don't know, that I haven't interviewed or talked to or don't know that, I will like just go through and follow, and I will
Mhm.
write them down. So I specifically look at SPFBO for like incoming authors to interview or
Yeah.
to connect with. So I think just being part of the 300, you can talk. I've talked to plenty of people where even that helps, right? Because
Mhm.
it's 300, so
Yeah,
that's
because
pretty cool.
you're part of the conversation, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And my friend Brian Wilson, who I think you've also had on,
yeah. I love Brian. Yeah,
author of the Forsaken Planet, he was like, dude, every time like a finalist gets announced, it's just like, boom, there's my book. Like every time a finalist gets announced, it's like Mark will post an image, a
yeah,
graphic
yeah.
of all the finalists lined
Super
up.
cool.
And since I was the first one, it's like every single time a finalist is announced, there's my book. So it's like the the little things that help boost your book beyond, like at this point, um I've spent very little money on promoting this book. uh if we want to talk a little bit about marketing now,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
because
Always.
SPFBO and SPSFC are kind of marketing tools when it comes down to it, you
Yeah,
know
yeah, yeah.
um so the book tour I spent $0. uh the entire book tour that I put together was just based on my connections and my friendships. People who have blogs who I was able to do guest posts, Fanfi Addict, who I'm which I'm a part of, podcasts like yours, other friends who run podcasts, booktube channels, whatever. All of that was just like preparing and writing people and
Yep.
asking like, would you be down to do this? Since Mushroom Blues launched, Um, I wouldn't necessarily know if this is like, I mean, like you could consider it like an investment in something that you know you're hopefully going to get a return on, but it's like
Yeah.
Broken Binding, for instance, is like a marketing thing because they have a huge audience and sort of like this market engine behind them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for me, it's kind of like I'm going to invest money in sending copies to them,
Yep.
knowing that I'm going to get a return on investment if all of them sell.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's like I sent them 100 copies of the book, which isn't cheap
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
necessarily.
Yep.
Like I sent them 100 hardcover copies, and that was how much was it? Every print copy was £10 each.
Mm.
So it's like you can do the math, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that's like a big investment to say like I'm gonna throw down like £1,000
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
on
Plus shipping, everything. Yeah.
yeah exactly on sending them copies. But then on return investment, I'm making back double that, right?
Yeah.
And we
Well,
sold out all 100 copies of that book
I was gonna say
that
like
Broken
just your
Binding had.
post or just their post where I think
Mm,
you can't remember if it was the one that you on Twitter or like X, the one that you shared or that they did, but I saw it and I was like, holy moly, like just the views alone was
yeah,
like staggering,
yeah,
like, and I was like, oh, I was like, retweet or whatever, reshare, but like that was like that alone to see that many people saw your book. I'm
yeah,
like, I mentioned it to somebody, I said, that's the kind of thing that like you want to pay for that type of advertising, if that
right,
makes sense. So I do
right,
think that was a smart investment personally.
right. And
So
and then in the end, it's like we sold those 100 copies in 2 days.
yeah, yeah,
So like the pre-order period was open on a Wednesday, and by Friday morning it was done,
yeah, yeah,
and all 100 copies were sold.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like there is some uh I would say like strategic thinking when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Oh,
But
for
in terms
sure.
of like marketing dollars, like I did a little bit of experimenting with Facebook ads at the beginning, but I saw that there was like no return there, and so I just stopped doing it.
Yeah, that
Um,
algorithm now is like so
yeah,
weird. It's so hard to get on the wave. I mean,
exactly. But in the end, like I realized like I'm very strategic about when I do sales. Like I've only done an ebook sale for the book. My first one since launch was when I was in Glasgow for Worldcon. So I did like a 5-day ebook sale during Worldcon, and that ended up selling me like 150 copies of the book, right? And so it's kind of just like being very purposeful about
yeah,
when you sell something,
yep.
when you put it on sale, the marketing budget that you have, the leveraging your connections with other people. Like I just did the math this week. I have like an Excel spreadsheet with all of my sales and um,
Oh,
where those sales
smart.
are being made. So
Yeah,
whether
yeah.
it's like Amazon KDP, I have it divided up into paperback and hardcover. Then I have, or sorry, just paperback and ebook.
Hmm.
And then Ingram Spark, I have paperback and hardcover. And then I have certain vendors that I've sold with before. So like
Oh,
Broken
okay.
Binding or Inkstone Books, that kind of thing. Then I have my wholesale numbers, which are basically like a bookstore is has purchased a copy of your book to sell in their
Oh, cool.
stock.
Yeah, yeah.
So I have all those numbers laid out.
Oh, that's smart.
And just this week, it's like I passed like 1,300.
Oh, that's awesome.
So like 1,300 sales since when is it? Mid-March.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which in the grand scheme of things is like really solid for an indie book.
Yeah, yeah. No, totally.
So it's just being really smart and purposeful and strategic about when you do certain things.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's like I've seen a lot of indie authors, I'm like not throwing any shade here or anything like that, but they'll put their book like free during launch week, for instance. And while this may seem like a smart strategy, it might not like I've seen some authors where it's like, you know, you put your book free on ebook and it nets like 3,000 downloads, right? But there are certain consumers who are going to the free section of Amazon
And only
and
consuming the free.
only consuming the free,
Yep.
but because you've devalued your book so early, the chances that they'll read your book are quite low.
Yep.
And the prioritization of when they will read your book is also completely skewed.
Yep.
And so from my perspective, it's like, okay, you just gave away 3,000 copies of your book. Awesome. It's in the hands of 3,000 people. But you've just severed thousands for your book
Yep.
as well. And so those 3,000 who got the book free in the first week could have been 3,000 that paid for the book over the course of a year.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
would I
Yeah.
prefer? Right.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's much more of a long term mentality and thinking about, like there hasn't been a week that's gone by where like sales of Mushroom Blues have completely stopped
Oh,
since
awesome.
launch.
Yeah. Yeah.
So from my perspective, it's like books should exist in a long term sort of market state,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed like you want someone to read your book like a year out, 2 years out. You don't want it to be like, okay, well, 3,000 people downloaded my book in the first week, and then I'm going to see shit all for the entirety of that book's remaining existence, or very little in comparison to what I could have earned.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there are certain things, like certain trends that I've seen where I'm like, I don't really know the viability of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
hey, to each their own, like everybody's experimenting here.
Yep. Yep.
But in terms of the experiment that I've run, it's been very much hands-on DIY marketing, like growing mushrooms from my book, like
Yeah.
actually
Yeah. Yeah.
growing
Yeah. That's
mushrooms
super
on a
cool.
physical copy, and people just being like, "Wow, that's super weird. Like, what the hell's going on here?" And that being enough of a draw for someone to be like, "Okay, this dude's gonna like grow mushrooms from his book and eat them. What else is going on here?" Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Those kinds of things, as opposed to uh, seemingly seemingly good like short-term market schemes that actually hinder your book in the long term. Like
No. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd rather have paid off everything I invested into the book, you know, as opposed to making it free and getting thousands and thousands of downloads, right? Like the people who've bought my book have actively sought it out,
Yeah.
and a lot of them are reading it and they're reviewing it. And so all of that is like a very um, positive feedback loop
Yeah. Yeah.
where I'm earning, like writing is a job. If you
Yeah.
want,
Yeah. Yeah.
it doesn't have to be your full-time job, but it's like, a lot of writers, it's like they want their books to earn. So for me, it's like the book earned out and it's continuing to earn, and I've reinvested all of my earnings since then into the audiobook, which will in turn, you know,
Yep. Whole new
accrue its
market.
earnings and feed back
Yeah.
in. And at the same time, like the people who buy my book are doing it with intentionality, which means that they're more likely to read it sooner,
Yeah.
which is then fed back into me receiving the reception at a bigger level than I'd anticipated, which is good.
Yeah.
It's like more ratings and reviews, which means that feedback shows other readers what people think, which also gives them a little bit more incentive to think like, oh, this book has X like average rating with a building number of ratings and reviews,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of thing. And so it's kind of like these different things feeding back into the credibility of your book, which you talked about before with SPFBO.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the end, it comes down to your book.
Yep.
It's like, is your book good? Readers on Goodreads and Amazon or whatever will say whether they think it's good.
And that's where, yeah. And I just want to say, because like you just mentioned so many good things there. Like the one thing I do want to say is like, just want to go back because I think it's so critical. So I go back to free books that I got from Google Play Books, and they're still on my Google Play Books. You know what I mean? And like there were a couple that I read, and then I bought book two, but not many. Now, 99 cents even, I'll buy so many books for 99 cents if I think they're good. Like if I follow people, if there's like a sale, or if there's even a $2.99 sale, or $1.99, but if it's a book I want, I will pay for that book. You know what I mean? Like I will pay for that book, and then I review every book that I pay for. Now, my only thing with that old trend of doing free, and I'm just saying, like I agree with you because I just think I used to think differently about it, but now talking to different people, I think differently. Similar to you, I'm like, I've been working my butt off on this thing. Even if I make
Yep.
my novella 99 cents, like you're gonna have to pay 99 cents unless,
Yep.
it's like that's just reality, right? Because I have to be able to earn something on it. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
half the, it's $1.99, right? That's half of a cup of coffee, right?
Yep.
But like it's taken me 2 years, right? And a lot of work to get that done. I think that's only fair, right? And I'm working and being patient and trying to get it to everybody when it's ready and not just
Mm-hmm.
putting out crap. So I think that that's totally fair. Now, my thing is, and my friend asked about this, he's like, are you going to go free for book one? I said, absolutely not. Because for me, it's like I feel like I've seen a lot of people do that. And then, yeah, you get your downloads, whatever, but I've seen them fall flat on book two
Yep.
because people think, oh, I got this free before. This author, in my opinion, it was like this author doesn't value their work enough, so why should I? That's kind of how
Mm-hmm.
it seems to
Exactly.
me.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And then it's like, how are you going to sell a book two or a book three? So, I've seen people do different things, but like, I don't know, I haven't seen that work so much like within the last 4 years for many people. 7, 8 years
Yep.
ago, it used to be a really big marketing tool, but like we said earlier, right, things change. And I think
Mm-hmm.
now, right, like especially after the pandemic, like you have to show people like I value my work, so you should. And I'm putting this
Exactly.
at a professional cost, so you should pay me a professional price. So I just agree
Yeah.
with you on that.
Like my wife and I have had conversations about this where it's like she has a master's in business administration. And so she
Mm.
knows about certain marketing techniques. And
Yeah.
she and I have had conversations where, she's like, you make your thing free, and that immediately flips a switch in the consumer's mind about what your work is value, what worth your work has, what
Yep.
value it has. And so when it comes to, yeah, like I think I don't necessarily think like the authors who are doing that are purposefully devaluing their work.
Yeah. Totally.
I I think they believe they're doing it
Like a
as
need.
a marketing
Yeah.
technique.
Yeah. Yep.
But from my perspective, it's a marketing technique that is not going to net long-term gain, whether it's
Yep.
someone who actually reads book one, or like you said, if you're going to write a series and you devalue your series from the get-go with free,
Yep.
that immediately puts the consumer's mindset into a certain place in association with your book. And
Yeah.
so
Yep.
the likelihood that they're going to read it anytime soon, pretty low. The likelihood
Yep.
that they're going to invest in anything else you do, pretty
Yep.
low.
Yep.
So,
No, totally. I think like there are people I've read recently where I was like, oh, like it doesn't like, there's just a few where I'm like, you could charge whatever you want for the book, you know what I mean? For Kindle or whatever, I'm gonna buy it. You know what I mean? Like
mm-hmm.
I bought the first one, I read it, I was satisfied from a business aspect, right? I was satisfied with the product, and now I'm ready to buy the product again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just the reality with consumerism, I think, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's books or something else. And I do agree with, I think anytime you do that, I used to think different, like I said, and my friend, like him and I used to personally train people, and we'd be like, oh, we just need clients, we'll do $20 a session. Well,
Mm-hmm.
we were worth 45, 50 at least, right? Now as a professional teacher, like I don't go below a certain amount of tutoring because I'm like,
Right.
I can't, right? Yeah, because it's like my service and my time is more valuable. I could be doing this, I could be spending time with my son, I could be
Mm-hmm.
writing and doing something I enjoy more than trying to tutor math or something. And it's like that, it just comes down to it. So my friend was always saying for years, he's like, Dan, you have to actually charge people what you're worth. And
Yep.
I totally agree with him. So,
Yeah.
and
I
I agree
mean,
with you. So,
all of it comes down to consumer psychology
yep. Yep.
and the ways in which you train people.
Yep.
And it's a really weird word to use, but when it comes to uh, books as a product, which is also kind of like a shitty thing to like have to admit, but when you write a book, it's like this is a passion project that becomes a product.
It is a product. Yeah.
Um,
It's a product. Yeah.
and so when it comes to products and when it comes to marketing, a lot of it comes down to how do you train the people who are potentially seeing what you're putting out there, how to perceive your product. And
Yeah.
so if you're teaching them to perceive your thing as free, then that ultimately dictates the worth of that thing.
Yep.
In which case, when people get stuff for free, they generally don't give a shit about it a lot of the time. It's like if you're a kid at the dentist and they give you a free lollipop, that's a different story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But as you get older, when things become free, it's either met with a devaluation sort of psychology or skepticism
Yeah,
about like,
totally.
why is this thing free,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so you're tapping into the psychology of people and the ways in which you want them to view you as an author and your books as products.
Yeah.
And so you have to be very careful about how you lay the foundation for their psychological reaction to what you're doing and what you're putting out there.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it comes down like that's we always talk about, cover, blurb, website, like
Yep.
whatever it is you're doing,
No,
profiles,
cover's huge, man, because it's like the majority of people who see your book cover, they will see it as a thumbnail on Amazon.
Yep.
And if your thumbnail doesn't stand out, this is actually a trick that people can do. It's like take your book cover, just open it on your laptop or whatever, and like shrink it
Yep.
and just see how it looks at different sizes.
Yep.
Because when it comes to an Amazon thumbnail profile, like people will determine whether they click on your book by something as simple as that. And
Yeah.
that once again taps into psychological reactions from a consumer perspective. It's like
Yeah.
their psychological reaction to like, can I read the title? Do I know
Yep.
what's happening on there? The color scheme. What are these things that are attracting to me about it? Or what are these things that are completely off-putting to me about it that I'm going to continue scrolling and completely ignore it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So these things come into play as well. It's like that's why like the title of Mushroom Blues is so goddamn big because like, people can read it. Like if I
Yeah.
make it really small, people can still read the title, right?
Yeah. Corey, like cover artist for the novellas, like he got all three right off the bat, right? Like we pre-planned them. We made them a scene. They're it's like it's an arc, which I think it'll be so cool once you get to the end because they match the story. So the first one starts at night, like sunset, because it's like the character's old life is essentially like changing. And then the middle one is like nighttime, like he's trying to find his way. And then the last one's like at like kind of like at dawn. It's like one
Yep.
of those scenes. So
And so if you
and I
laid them like front cover, like
yep,
side to side, they'd all work
yep.
together.
And that's him and I designed that right from the start. And he was like, "Oh, I like that." I had this idea. He's like, "Oh, I like that," and he ran with it. It was amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like we went and shrunk down each cover, and not only did it the Amazon, like Kindle, not like Amazon, but the Kindle on your phone, right? As you're going through, shrunk them down, but also put them side by side if
Mm-hmm.
we did something else with them, and it still worked. So, but I mean,
Yep.
it was like there was a lot of thought and design that
Yep.
like went into the process for that, and it was like we were talking about novellas, right? Like just like shorter novels, it's like whatever. But it was like I told him I was like, it's really important for me to say like this is me and I'm trying to provide you a great product as much, put everything I have. So it's like we felt like that really had to be done first. We've made a couple changes since then because I changed a few things in the book, but not really. It was like I had scenes that were just totally set and there were some
Mm-hmm.
good ideas we had, but other than that, like they're good to go, which is nice because now, when I release the first one, I can then do like a cover reveal thing for the second one, like right off the bat and do like a rapid release thing. But it was just really cool that we were able to design that way. But yeah. I know we're wrapping
I
up
mean,
on time,
yeah.
but I just
So
wanna
so much of it just happened into psychology. So
it really
pay attention to those things, please.
yeah, yeah. I like literally will watch like I talk to my friend about advertising psychology all the time because he's like that's one of his majors and we work together and it's like use your resources, right? So I think it's
Yeah,
cool.
exactly.
But I just want to make sure that we had a little bit of time left to as we're wrapping up here just to talk about like what you have on the current docket.
Yeah.
Excuse me, in the Fungalverse. I just wanted to make sure people had time and saw what you had coming in the future. So
Yeah. So I've got actually just this week I started outlining the sequel to Mushroom
that's
Blues,
awesome.
which hopefully will come out next year. But before that, I've got Spore City. No relation to City of Spores. I had this name since before I knew Austin. I'm sorry, buddy, but I'm gonna stick with it. Which is the start of a trilogy set within the Fungalverse. So same world as Mushroom Blues, but this trilogy takes place 3 decades afterwards. Some recurring characters,
Oh,
some
cool.
like quite a bit of crossover and things that happen in Mushroom Blues and its sequels that will sort of affect what happens in Spore City and its
Oh, that's
sequels.
awesome.
And then I'm working on sort of like a short story novelette that I'll release as like freebie for a newsletter sign up.
Oh, cool.
Which for anyone who's read Mushroom Blues, the character in this story is Koji, who's a quite a fan favorite, and that one's going to be like a little sort of prequel novelette to
Oh,
something
cool.
that happens to Koji in relation to uh, things that happen in his story in Mushroom Blues. So
Oh, that's super cool.
yeah, man.
No, that's awesome. I just think it's cool
Oh,
because if
and
you guys,
also the audiobook for Mushroom Blues. I'm not sure exactly when this episode is going out, but
oh,
early November. Hopefully the audiobook will be up on Audible and ready to go.
I was gonna say I sent myself the schedule earlier, and then it's been like the internet here has been so rough today. But I just want to tell people because we should be before. So actually, this will come out August 26th. So actually before that. So this is like perfect
October
advertising.
26th.
Yeah, so this is like perfect
Okay,
advertising. So that's
perfect.
awesome.
So yeah, the Mushroom Blues audiobook. When you hear this, it will be out at least within a couple weeks.
I knew I forgot something earlier because I was excited to chat with you before we got started. So
It's all good, bud.
that's what happens, guys, when you interview your friends. Like you're like, oh hey, I haven't seen you. Like we're talking about everything but the schedule and like stuff that
Yeah.
I normally like check off. But I didn't even do the checklist today. So my best friend's gonna listen to this and be like, why do I help you with these things if you're not going to use the resources that I give you? So, sorry,
Good.
Dave, if you're listening, and Dan. So no, but that's absolutely awesome. Just want to say to our audience, just make sure go down below anywhere where you're listening or watching this, and in the description, if you're new, you can find all of Adrian, his social links, book links, everything's gonna be right down there. So please make sure you check out those. Please make sure that you check out you review all of Adrian's products. That not only helps Adrian, but we talk about Felix on here a lot, or Sean T. King. It helps all these other people too. So, typographers.
Rate and review the Fantasy and Sci-Fi Fanatics podcast, or SFF Addicts.
That would be great. I'm also gonna I'm gonna put your guys' podcast in there as well. I always do that when we're together and stuff. So please make sure you check out Adrian MJ's podcast. Absolutely amazing. Way too much awesome stuff. So I'm sorry ahead of time. It's kind of like Vox Machina. If you get into it, like be prepared, but it's going to be amazingness. So, but make sure you bring your notebook because there's going to be a lot of really good stuff. They have so many great guests. You guys have so many great guests just recently. It's been awesome. So I've learned a lot. So everything will be there. Adrian, thank you so much for coming on. Good luck. Every time Mark posts, I'm like, please keep going. Like I am like your biggest fan.
Hey man, I'm happy to be in the top 10. If I make it to top 3, if I make it to number 1, like we'll see. But
you will be like one of my 3 like people that won and like interviewed before anything. Like I'm like yes, let's go. Like I think it's gonna be so awesome. And it's your debut, which is just so much more exciting for me. Like, and my wife, she goes, and my brother, he's like, this is like watching a Lions game or a Super Bowl for you, isn't it? I was like, it really is. Like, I was like, my friend is in the playoffs right now. Like, it's so exciting.
In his first season, man.
Yeah, rookie season, and he's about to throw the touchdown, or whatever, catch it, whatever. Not that I'm not a big sports fan, but this is just like my life now, and I love books and people that write them. So, but good luck. If there's anything else I can do, please let me know. I just, since you remind me, once that Audible hits, please let me know because I will post that for blog and newsletter on the podcast, and I'll put it up on social media, and then I'll send that back to you, and then hopefully, we can get more sold for you. But yeah, keep posting the podcast group, whatever you need, and don't be afraid to brag. I'm already doing it for you. So if you don't, I'm just going to do it for you in the podcast group. So cool. I think it's awesome. But Adrian, thank you so much.
Thank you as always.
Yeah. Anytime I want to come back on chat, let's do it. Please tell MJ I said hello. I'm trying to connect with her really soon to try and come back on for season 4. So I can't wait to chat with you guys again. But hope you have a great rest of the day. If you need anything else, just let me know. Other than that, I'll see you later, my friend.
Thank you, buddy. You too.
See you.